All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features in order to help you get the most out of your character choices. So, today, we've been going on this kick for a little while now, where we've been going through the player's handbook and basically covering every single feat in there in order to understand the various ways you can use them, highlight some underutilized feats, and just give people a much better idea of how they can use feats to create really unique and interesting characters. And I don't think there's any thing else to do other than just keep on going with these feats. So we have basically a page and a half a little left, and my goal is to get through the rest of these in this of the video. So hopefully this will be the end of the PHB feats. Now, Xanathar's guide did add some racial feats that, depending on how interested you guys are, I may do a video on that. I may not. But for the most part, these are the feats that I've seen used most often. So let's dive right back into it with Ritual Caster. This is a weird one. It does have a prereq. You have to have either intelligence or wisdom of 13 or higher. And me personally, I've never seen someone use this feat. And this is one of the I think this is the only feat I actually did other research myself to figure out what other people say about it, because my first read through of it, I could not really find a good reason to use this feat. After doing a little bit of research on it, the research I did said that this is an incredibly useful and a favorite feat for a lot of people. I don't see it, but let's get into the feat itself. Basically, you've learned a couple spells as rituals. Ritual casting in 5th edition is a separate way to cast certain spells. The benefit of ritual casting is it doesn't use a spell slot. The drawbacks are you do have to spend an additional 10 minutes on top of whatever the casting time for this spell is. And you have to concentrate the entire time. So if you have a spell like suggestion on is the example that I saw in my research, you would have to stop concentrating on the suggestion spell, which can last for 8 hours, in order to cast the ritual. That being said, there is only a finite number of ritual spells, and there's actually, without this feat, there's only, I believe, 4 or 5 classes that can actually cast rituals. Bards, clerics, druids, wizards, and then the new artificer from Rising from the Last War, the new Eberron book. Those are the ones that can cast rituals. And as far as actual ritual spells that can be cast, generally, first level rituals are the most numerous. I think there's about a dozen or so across the various spell lists. Literally right after you get above level 1. So starting at level 2, there's maybe I think 6 or 8 level 2, and then the higher you get, like level 3, I think there's maybe a half dozen tops, and then 4, 5, 6. There's like 2 or 3 per level. So this is not, there's not an extensive number of spells that you can get cast as rituals. And so some of them are really useful. Things like Leoman's Tiny Hut, um, detect magic is really useful. But they tend to be very utility based because, again, they take 10 minutes, which is 60 rounds of combat, which nobody wants to do. So, this is a specific ritual. Is you ritual caster feat. You pick a spellcasting class. Now, it doesn't actually have to be a class that has the ritual caster feat. You can choose warlocks, or you can choose sorcerers who can't do ritual casting, and get access to their spell list and any rituals on there. Or if you are a warlock or a sorcerer and you want to be able to cast rituals, this is a way to do that. Just kind of expand your ability. When you take the feat, you get a ritual book, very similar to a spell book that wizards carry, and you learn 2 first level rituals, which is okay. But it's not really a game-changing thing. However, as you go along, if you find scrolls or spell books that have ritual spells in them that are on the class list of the class you chose, you can actually copy them into your ritual book, very similar to how a wizard copies spells into their book, and basically add more and more spells to this book, to the point where theoretically you could have every ritual spell in your in the class you chooses spell list, and each one takes 2 hours per level of the spell and cost 50 gold per level to copy it into your book. So like a level 2 spell would take you for 4 hours to copy into the book and cost you 100 gold. One of the things a lot of wizards do is they will try to get every spell imaginable in their spell book. So when they're preparing spells in the morning, they have access to just every spell they could want, and can really customize their daily spells that day to just fit the situation that they're in. And the ritual caster thing is kind of like that, only you don't actually have to prepare any of these spells to cast them. At least not according to the text here, and not according to the research I did. So there is a benefit to having this, even if you are like a wizard. A wizard has to prepare the ritual spell, which takes up one of his prepared spells for the day. With ritual caster, you would technically have a separate book, which if you lose it, you're in trouble. But it would allow you to cast rituals without having them prepared, just by using this spell book. So I can see some benefits to it, but this is another one where you would really need to build the character around, okay, what rituals do I want access to, and how am I going to use them to their best effect. So again, after doing some research on it, I can see it has its uses. But again, none of the convention tables that I ran for 3 or 4 years, I ever see anyone use this feat, and no one at any of my tables has ever used the feat. So I'd be interested to see a character built around Ritual Caster, or built with the intent of maybe not built around it completely, but built with that in mind as an aspect of their character build. Because, like I said, I just haven't seen a whole lot of use of it. So, the next one is called Savage Attacker. This one I have seen kind of popularly used, specifically with barbarians. Once per turn, when you roll damage for a melee weapon attack, you can re-roll the weapon's damage dice and use either to total. So as far as feats go, this one seems slightly underpowered compared to other feats. Like, I really would like to see an ability score increase added to it, but the ability to basically roll advantage on your damage die is kind of a big deal. Now, it only works with melee weapons, so to take that with a grain of salt. But if you have a melee weapon like a sun sword or for frostband, where you get extra damage dice that you roll, this can be incredibly useful, because you roll once and wow, that's a lot of ones. Let me savage attacker this and get more. And if you accidentally roll lower than what you originally rolled, you can use either one. So there really isn't a drawback to basically re-rolling every turn. Now, you can only do it once per turn, so pick your battles. But yeah, at least once per turn, you probably should be re-rolling your melee damage dice if you have this. And what that does is it just increases your average damage overall, which is nice. Again, it has direct impact on damage numbers, which is one of the reasons why it's used more often than, say, like Ritual Caster, which is entirely out of combat. So yeah. Yeah, like I said, it's an interesting one, and I've seen people use it, but I think it's mostly because it's a very simple feat to use, and people like that. If you're doing more the theory crafting or creating, really unique kind of characters, this one I don't think it adds as many benefits as some of the other underutilized ones, but the benefits it does add are useful. So. Next one is Sentinel. We mentioned it before in the last video with Polar Master. Now you can actually hear all the cool stuff it does. When you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, the creature's speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn, which was the aspect that I mentioned before as being really, really useful with Polar Master. But there's more. Creatures provoke opportunity attacks from you, even if they take the disengage action before leaving your reach, which is another incredibly useful thing, especially if you combine that with that first ability. And then 3, when a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against a target other than you, and that target doesn't have this feat, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against the attacking creature. So Sentinel itself is designed to make you an uber tank. The whole thing about this is you are going to be running up into conflict to get the most out of it. It's best if you have if you're near someone else. So Sentinel can be really, really useful if you go in with kind of a squishier damage dealer, like maybe a monk or a rogue, because you can punish the bad guy if they try to attack the rogue, and you can make opportunity attacks whenever. Which is really common thing if you get up close and personal with like a caster or something. a lot of times they'll take the disengage action and then book it out of there so that they can get other beefier guys between you and them. With the Sentinel feat, not only do they still provoke opportunity attacks, but if you hit them, you reduce their speed to 0. Which again is kind of a control style play style. Remember how often I say the ability to control where enemies are on the battlefield is really useful? This is another control type ability mixed in with defensive abilities, and it's again, if you want to make a really cool kind of sword and board like paladin or fighter, or even if you want to be a little bit more unique, and maybe you use this with a hyper movement focused character like a barbarian or a monk or even a rogue, you can have a really interesting character that now also has the ability to stop people in their tracks and other really cool things like that. So, yeah, really fun. Used really often, at least in the convention scene, especially with Polearm Master. But even without it, I've seen it used. So, next one. This is by far the most used feat I personally have seen, along with Great Weapon Master. This is the ranged version of it. It's called Sharpshooter, and it's just massively useful in every sense. There isn't a downside to taking this if you are a ranged attacker, specifically a ranged weapon attacker. This is all the cool stuff you get with Sharpshooter. Attacking at long range doesn't impose the disadvantage on your ranged weapon attack rolls. Now, a lot of people will undervalue that, but look at it this way. A longbow has a range of 120 feet short range, 600 foot long range. So anything from 121 to 600 is normally done with disadvantage. Not with Sharpshooter. If you have I see this most often with rangers, but I've also seen quite a few ranged fighters use as well. Using the longbow with Sharpshooter makes you incredibly deadly. There aren't spells that have a 600 foot range in the base thing. There's another feat we'll talk about in a second that can get a couple spells close to that range, but 600 feet is massive. They would have to use 2 or 3 turns with dashes to get to the point where they could even attempt to start attacking back. So just that extra range is incredibly useful as long as you can see that far. Second one, your ranged weapon attacks ignore half cover and the 3/4 cover. Another thing that a lot of, at least a lot of the DMs I've seen don't utilize at the ton is half and the 3/4 cover. And one of the reasons I've seen a lot of them just avoid doing that is this. Generally, your half or the 3/4 cover is really only going to affect ranged attacks. Melee attacks, it's hard to have half or the 3/4 cover against someone that's close enough that they can just stab you. And so many people that use ranged weapons have the Sharpshooter feat generally really early, like right at the 4th level. Or I've even seen some human characters take it as their human variant feat. Yeah, it's just really useful. So a lot of people just don't even bother with it because sharpshooters aren't affected by it. And the last one, the reason this is so utilized, before you make an attack with a ranged weapon that you are proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll. If the attack hits, you add +10 to the attack's damage. This is literally the same thing as Great Weapon Master's attack. It's just for ranged, and it's massively useful. especially rangers get extra to attack, so they can attack twice, doing this to twice. Fighters can get up to 4 attacks. If you do this on every single attack, that's an extra 40 damage. Or if you actions surge, that is an extra 80 damage in a single turn. That's on top of any other damage you do with whatever ranged weapon you're using. I cannot say enough how useful this feat is. Me, but personally, I, as a DM, I find it boring just because of how much it is used, but I can't argue with the results. It's a relatively simple feat to use. The numbers are not difficult to figure out, and it just works. So don't feel bad about using this. If you want to just be a range damage dealer, this is by far the best bang for your buck in range damage. And with that extra range without disadvantage built into it, you're not going to be getting hit that often, as long as you can pick where you stand and things like that. So really good. And then the next one is Shield Master. Now, this one I have seen used. I don't see it used a lot because it's a very defensive feat, and some of the benefits of it don't translate directly to damage, and so people kind of underestimate and undervalue it. However, if you want to play that sword and board fighter, or maybe that really classic paladin who has that cool sword and like glittering shield with their holy symbol on it, this is by far one of the coolest ways you can go about that. So, if you take the attack action on your turn, you can use a bonus action to try and shove a creature within 5 feet of you with your shield. Now, this kind of ignores exactly what the shove or it doesn't ignore. It doesn't actually describe what shoving does. And I'm actually going to look it up here just so I can give you the exact use of it, because I don't want to be wrong. Shoving a creature. Using the attack action, you can make a special melee attack to shove a creature, either to knock it prone or push it away from you. If you're able to make multiple attacks with the attack action, this attack replaces one of them. The target must be no more than one size larger than you and must be within your reach. Instead of making an attack roll, you make a strength athletics check contested by their strength athletics or dexterity acrobatics check. And if you win, you either knock them prone or push it 5 feet away from you. Again, I say this constantly. Controlling where the enemy stands is really useful. However, knocking an opponent prone, also crazy useful. Again, a prone target has all of their all melee attacks against them have advantage, and all their attacks have disadvantage. So it's a really effective way to give your team a boost, give yourself a boost. Again, it says if you take the attack action on your turn, so you do have to attack first before you use it. So in general, you're not going to be able to benefit yourself a ton, but you are able to benefit the rest of your team. Or again, the ability to move a target into a more advantageous position, or throwing them off a cliff or off of a bridge or off of a rooftop or anything like that is still crazy useful. So yeah, the next one, if you aren't incapacitated, you can add your shield's AC bonus to any dexterity saving throw you make against a spell or other harmful effect that targets only you. So that one's a little bit more limited. But again, if you're kind of charging into the forefront, um, it's not outside the realm of reason that you might get maybe cantrips and things like that. Okay, no, it's just a sacred flame to take, say, deck save or things like that. Definitely not as useful as the first one, but this is still a good thing. And adding your AC bonus from your shield can be pretty big. And then the final one, if you are subjected to an effect that allows you to make a deck save to take only half damage, you can use your reaction to take no damage if you succeed on this saving throw, interposing your shield between yourself and the source of the effect. So this is kind of a version of evasion. Unlike a regular evasion where it just happens, this one requires your reaction, but again can be massively useful. That high level fireball, well, if you already have a decent deck score, you can block it and then take no damage. And there's a lot of other really high level spells that take a lot of damage that you can just get rid of entirely. It does make you a very defensive powerhouse, and it gives you a use for your bonus action. I've mentioned there are a lot of classes that don't have a ton of uses for their bonus action, to the point where I know a lot of fighters that almost never use their bonus action because they just have nothing to do with it. Paladins as well, your bonus action is really only utilized when you use any of these smite spells, because you use your bonus action to cast it on your sword and then you hit somebody. So this actually gives you a use for your bonus action, which is always a good thing. It improves the action economy of your team. Yeah, I can't overstate how useful being able to knock an enemy prone is. Next, skilled. It's a really simple feat. You gain proficiency in any combination of 3 skills or tools of your choice. This is another one that if you have a very specific build that you want, this can be kind of useful. If you want, like my Shadow Monk is effectively a rogue without expertise. And that's because I took the criminal background, which gave him a proficiency in Thieves' Tools and Sleight of Hand. So just about anything a rogue can do, my monk can do. However, I had to be a criminal to do that. If you want to build a rogue without being a rogue, like a rogue type character that can unlock the doors, but maybe instead of being a rogue, it's a ranger. And you're more of like an urban ranger type thing. This is a great way to give you, those abilities that you weren't, or those skills you weren't able to get. Again, though, this is something that can be good in creating an interesting character, but is another thing you kind of have to plan ahead of time, because just getting 3 random skills, depending on the skills you choose, could be kind of useless. But pretty simple for the thing for the feat to utilize, though. Skulker is the next one. This one has a prereq. You need to be Dex. You need to have Dex 13 or higher. And this is another one that I don't see used often and enough. I have seen it used a fair amount, but nowhere near as often as I think it should, because it's a cool feat. You get the 3 abilities in it. You can try to hide when you are lightly obscured from the creature from which you are hiding. Massively useful. Hiding, especially if you're a rogue. Rogues have that cunning action that allows them to hide. And normally you have to have something blocking line of sight, or something making it really difficult for them to see you. This, you only need to be a little lightly obscured, which there's a lot of ways to get that. You could just be in a heavily wooded area and be like, 10, 15 feet away, or you could be in dim lights. and that's enough to give you lightly obscured. So that really useful. When you are hidden from a creature and miss it with a ranged weapon attack, making the attack doesn't reveal your position. This is a really useful thing for what I call shooty rogues. Rogues kind of come into two flavors for the most part. You have ones that come up and stab people, and you have ones that hide far away and use crossbows or short bows and attack from afar. Both of them can get their sneak attack bonus, which is really useful. If you if you combine Skulker with Sharpshooter, you have a really powerful build. Simply because you lose a little accuracy with the Sharpshooter extra damage. So if you accidentally miss, you're not your position isn't given away. You can just wait until the next turn and fire again without having to burn your cunning action, and do crazy amounts of damage. So very useful. And then the last one, the dim light doesn't impose the disadvantage on your wisdom perception checks relying on sight. Again, that's one that I don't see a ton of people utilizing. Simply because I know a lot of DMs that don't realize that the dim light gives you the disadvantage. So yeah, your mileage will vary on that one, but the other two ones incredibly useful, and this is a great feat if you want to build that shadow kind of character, always weaving in and out of darkness. Being able to kind of skip away at a moment's notice. Very Batman-esque kind of character, where you turn one way and you look back and they're just gone. That is a Skulker. Next, my personal favorite underused feat. I don't think I have seen this used at any of the tables I've run, other than when I have used it. I actually have a character built around this feat that I love. The feat is Spell Sniper. This is basically Sharpshooter for magic. However, there's some trade-offs. So it does have a prereq. You have to be able to cast at least one spell, which is kind of important since this affects your spells. But you have the three abilities you get with it. First, when you cast a spell that requires you to make an attack roll, the spell's range is doubled. Let that sink in for a minute. Your spell's range is doubled. Remember how I said that 600 feet was really far and nobody has spells that can get that far? Well, with Spell Sniper, you do. Specifically, if you are a warlock, there are Eldritch invocations you can take that increase Eldritch Blast's range to 300 feet. And then there's another one that allows you to add your charisma modifier to your Eldritch Eldritch Bolt attacks. Or is that the spell? Wow, I am just completely drawing a blank on what spells are. My word, my brain is fried. Eldritch Blast, that's what it's called. Jeez. Anyway, so if you do that and then have Spell Sniper, you have a 600-foot range Eldritch Blast. And like I mentioned before, Eldritch Blast is a unique cantrip in that instead of just gaining more damage, you get extra attacks as you go higher. So with Spell Sniper and Eldritch Blast, you can effectively have the same number of attacks and better damage, since it's a D10 for Eldritch Blast, than most fighters. And then you can add your charisma modifier to the damage. You can be a really cool spell as a sniper. Like, it's just cool. Your ranged spell attacks ignore half cover and three-quarter cover, just like sharpshooter. Again, incredibly useful. There's actually a module I ran where you go into this mausoleum thing that has these kind of archer slits on each side, and behind these archer slits are flame skulls. Flame skulls have this ability to basically just cast fireball, but because they are behind these archer slits, they have no problem casting fireball. But if you try to attack back, they have the three-quarter cover, which adds +5 to their AC, which is a big deal. With this, you can just go pow, 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 and knock them all out without any issue whatsoever. So really, really useful there. And this is the thing where instead of getting extra damage, you learn one cantrip that requires an attack roll. Choose the cantrip from Bard, Cleric, Druid, Sorcerer, Warlock, or Wizard spell list. Your spell casting ability for this cantrip depends on the list you choose from, blah, blah, blah. So you get an extra cantrip for doing this. So something that you can do is, let's say you're a sorcerer, you're charisma-based spellcaster. Choose the warlock as your spell list, and then you get a warlock spell like Eldritch Blast. I'm a huge fan of Eldritch Blast, but you get to use it as a sorcerer who gets more spell slots, who can modify spells. To let you know, my spell sniper that I built, it starts with 2 levels of warlock and then goes to sorcerer for everything else, because I want those invocations that give him extra range and extra damage. And basically what happens with him is if you take Quicken Spell, which allows you to cast a spell as an normally as an action, as a bonus action, you can double cast Eldritch Blast for a single sorcery point. So at level 5, which is when you would have 2 and 3, you can make 4 attacks per turn with just the cost of 1 sorcery point. And as you get higher, you can get, like, once you get to the 17th level, you can make 8 attacks per turn by just using 1 sorcery point. It's super cool. You can attack from 600 feet away. You do crazy amounts of damage. It's just a cool build, and nobody uses it, and they really should. And you don't have to like optimize that way. You can be a druid and have a bunch of other spells that you use from really far away, or stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of different ways to do this. That's just one example that's kind of broken. Yeah, I love that. Let's go to the next one. To the Tavern Brawler. This is another one that I don't see utilized a ton. To be honest, I don't think I've ever seen anyone utilize this, because it's useful in very specific situations, and there are other ways to kind of build a character like this that people just don't really consider this the best way to do it. But let's look at it. For first, increase your strength or con score by 1. So this is a nice one if you already have an odd number to just give you some extra abilities. Second, you are proficient with improvised weapons, which, if you're not aware, there is a class of weapon called improvised weapons. It's if you pick up a table leg, or you pick up a candelabra and try to hit someone with it. It's not something a lot of people utilize, because most adventurers travel with their weapons. However, if you want to create, again, another kind of unique kind of character, where maybe he doesn't travel around with weapons, or if you're in a situation like you're escaping from a prison and they took all your weapons, this is a really cool way for you to be able to still do damage. Your unarmed strike uses a D4 for damage. So this is another thing a lot of people don't realize. Anyone can use unarmed strike. You are proficient in unarmed strike. However, an unarmed strike only does 1 plus your strength damage. Or your strength mod damage. That's it. It's not really useful. If you could crit, you don't get any bonus damage. It's just really not that great. The only class that really does a lot of unarmed strikes are monks, because their unarmed strikes get really powerful. By level, I think, 17, it's a D10 for damage. And they can use dex instead of strength for their unarmed strikes. This gives you the ability to fight like a low-level monk. And actually do damage with your unarmed strike. Now, again, a D4 doesn't sound very large. However, when you could combine it with like a 20 strength score, that means if you make, like, if you're a fighter and you've got, the 3 attacks, you're into tier 3. Bare minimum, no matter what you're rolling under D4, that's 15 damage. And that's without any weapons or anything. This is just a pure unarmed ability. So there are some benefits to it. And then the last one, when you hit a creature with an unarmed strike or an improvised weapon on your turn, you can use a bonus action to attempt to grapple the target. So we talked about this, I think, in the first video. Maybe this is the second. The grappler ability, where it gives you the grappler feat. It gives you extra things you can do when you're grappling. This basically means you can grapple someone without having to waste an attack roll or anything like that. And you can make a strength-based unarmed fighter. Like I mentioned before, as a monk, you need to have your dex high and your wisdom high in order to play a monk effectively, because they don't get armor. Your wisdom is used for all your DCs. Making a strength-based monk just isn't really a very viable option. However, a fighter with the tavern brawler and the grappler feats can be an incredibly effective brawler or effective, like, for frontline guy, because they can go in punching, they can grapple someone with the grappler feat. They get advantage on all their attacks. That person can't move unless they win a strength or dex contest. And if you're a strength-based fighter, you're probably trained in athletics. You're going to be hard to get away from, and you literally just walk to people and go. So again, there are some really cool, unique builds you can create with the Tavern Brawler. Just most people see, oh, it's only a D4. I don't want to have a weapon, quote unquote, that's only a D4. So I'm not going to take this. And they don't really value the grapple maneuver because, again, just on its own, it doesn't do a whole lot. Restrained is a lot more useful. But if you can combine this with grappler, you can have a really cool but powerful character, especially if you're playing like fighter or barbarian would be another one, since it would be strength-based attacks in that. That you're an opposing, difficult person to deal with. I mentioned before when we were dealing with, which one was it? Durable. The durable feat, where I'm like, yeah, I don't really see it used that much because there's another feat that just gives you extra hit points. That's tough. Tough is a feat that has existed since the 3rd edition when they created feats. It is probably the most common feat for someone to take if they don't have an ability score to increase. that they want to, and they just have an extra feat to take. Simply because the tough feat is your hit point maximum increases by an amount equal to twice your level when you gain this feat. Whenever you gain a level thereafter, your hit point maximum is increased by an additional 2 hit points. It's just extra hit points. And it's a lot of extra hit points. Even if you take this right at level 4, it's 8 extra hit points right then. And by the time you hit level 20, that's 40 extra hit points. And in the 5th edition, you don't really have massive amounts of hit points. Like really only for fighters, barbarians, and barbarians. I guess my monk has gotten to the 3-digit hit points. But it's difficult to get to triple-digit hit points without building your character that way. So with the tough, you're just adding a lot of hit points. Makes it literally can be useful for every single class, because more hit points is never a bad thing. And like I said, because it's just extra hit points, this isn't something that you need to plan your build around. You can just level up and go, hey, my casting ability is already maxed. I don't really see another one that I want to increase right now. I'm just going to take the tough feat. You can just add it on to literally any build, and it will help that build. So very useful. Next one is Warcaster. Warcaster is one I see used a lot, just because it's really, really useful. Prereq, you have to be able to cast a spell, mostly because, again, it deals with spell casting. But the 3 benefits you get with it are: you have advantage on Constitution saving throws that you make to maintain your concentration on a spell when you take damage. Concentration checks, I've mentioned, they can be the Achilles heel of casting classes. A lot of the most powerful spells are concentration. So being able to get rid of those spells really quickly is really useful. Warcaster makes it that much harder. And if you are playing a class that does a lot of concentration spells, Druids are one that you used to be really popular for this, because they have a spell called Moonbeam that in the first year, I want to say, of a 5th edition, people would abuse the hell out of this, because a few people misread the description and just treated it as a laser beam of death, where basically you could create this moonbeam, and any target that enters the beam for the first time on its turn or ends its turn there takes damage, and if it's polymorphed or anything like that, if it's not in its regular form, it's forced back. So really useful, but people read it as, anytime you're in it, you take damage. And as a bonus action on every turn to turn afterwards, you can move the beam the 30 feet. So what people used to do is just cast it and then just rake it over all of their enemies, melting them, basically. Now, it's not how this spell works, and there was some clarification from Jeremy Crawford, stating that's not how it works. But even as intended, it's a really useful spell, and it's concentration. And there's a lot of those. Druids also have Call Lightning is another concentration spell that's just crazy useful, because every turn you can just do more damage with it. So this one I see used all the time. Second thing you get with it, you can perform the somatic components of spells even when you have weapons or a shield in one or both hands. This really helps if you are kind of what I could call a battle mage. If you are a caster like a paladin or something, and there's actually somatic components, surprisingly enough, a lot of paladin spells don't have somatic components, because they generally have a sword and shield. But this is a great way for you to have a sword and shield and still be able to cast without having to put something away costing actions and the things like that. So very, very useful. And then when a hostile creature's movement provokes an opportunity attack from you, you can use your reaction to cast a spell at the creature rather than making an opportunity attack. The spell must have a casting time of 1 action and must target only that creature. Crazy, crazy useful. Again, this feat is built around the idea that you're going to be going to toe-to-toe with enemies. But combining Warcaster with something like Sentinel means you're getting the ability to cast spells at a lot of different times. Or combining Warcaster with Polearm Master, you can do some really, really bad stuff with that. And it's not just cantrips that you can cast. You can cast a level 7 spell or level 9 spell if you want. It can only target that person. So things like Fireball, Lightning Bolt, those are out because even if they only did hit that person, they don't target only that person. But there, I mean, the skies are literally the limit with an ability like that where you can start casting. And again, if you set up people in order to get this to work, like combining Warcaster with an ability that causes fear, where it forces the target to move on their own. Again, forced movement won't give you opportunity attacks, but if they voluntarily move, even if it's compelled due to a spell like suggestion or through a fear effect or something like that, it will still trigger Warcaster, which will give you the ability to cast a spell, basically just giving you extra spells, extra actions, which in turn improves the action economy for your team. So it's a massively, massively useful. The only kind of limiting factor is you have to be up close and personal with these guys. That means if you're building a spellcaster, you need to build the spellcaster in a way that they can take a hit. Blade Singers are real popular to use this with. There's actually a wizard subclass, I believe, called the Battle Wizard or Battle Mage. This is something like that in Xanathars that gives them access to armor. Clerics, because they already have medium or heavy armor proficiency, depending on the subclass, can make a lot of use out of this because clerics are already pretty hard to hit. They have a decent amount of health. They can cure themselves, and now they can cast spells as opportunity attacks. Like, it really doesn't get much better than that. And then finally, the last feat, congratulations, you've made it, is Weapon Master. 2 things: you get strength or dex score increased because those are what you use to attack with weapons, and you gain proficiency with 4 weapons of your choice. Each one must be a simple or a martial weapon. Again, it can be useful, especially if you have an odd numbered ability score that's either strength or dex, and you just want some extra utility. Get some extra weapons. You know, having having a wizard that can use, you know, a pike might be kind of cool, or a great sword wielding wizard could be kind of interesting to be honest. But beyond that, like, again, Weapon Master is another one of those skills that you really have to plan out. It needs to be a part of your interesting character build, probably from the beginning, because most classes that are going to get benefits from having the ability to wield a lot more weapons already are proficient with most of their weapons that they would learn. So not the greatest thing, but again, if it's one of those feats that you're just taking because you have an odd number and you just want some extra utility for the character, it's hard to go wrong with giving them access to more weapons. It really is. And that's it, folks. That is every feat in the player's handbook. As I mentioned before, feats are incredibly useful ways to make your character unique. So even if you do have a party where you have two of this is the same class in it, or maybe the three of this is the same class, you can use feats to really make your character feel special, feel unique, and so that you never feel like, oh, really it doesn't matter what I do because this other person is going to be able to do the exact thing. No, pick, an interesting feat. And yeah, things like a great weapon master or sharpshooter, really effective, really useful. But everybody takes them. So maybe, take it to Tavern Brawler, or take a Charger and just start building a character that brings a new utility to the party that no other character can do. In the comments below, just a little like last time, I really want to know, what are your thoughts about some of these feats? I think these this last video feats has some of the more interesting and more unique feats for creating crazy characters. So in the comments below, let me know. Have you used one of these underutilized feats? Have you created a really interesting character? Have you, impressed your DM with it? Have you pissed off your DM with it? Let me know in the comments below. Also in the comments below, let me know, do you guys want me to cover the Xanathar guide feats? Or is there another aspect of D&D that you want to see me do a deep dive into? Otherwise, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.